We're working on the P8 phenotype, which is Parkinson's disease. We have here the lead of this work, Dr. Alan Wu, and other collaborators. So looking forward to push the phenotype to completion.
So the topics that, thanks for that, and thanks everyone for joining, really appreciate it. So Gowtham sent a agenda of topics to talk about. The first one is, let me just pull it up. Suggested topic, status of our local OMOP. That's underway pretty good. So we don't need to dwell on that. We are doing our ETL and extraction and so on, but there's good momentum there. We have a server, so that's good. Second topic is the unanimity definition to completion. So is it complete? Are the rules accurate? Do we need specific subgroups? So when I went over, so one question is, I was encouraged to focus on a single phenotype to get it to completion. And I think that is the unanimity definition, with and without meds. In order to, and I do not have an Atlas instance right now. So in order to be confident that this definition is doing what we want it to, I think I need to, it would be ideal if I could examine the cohorts at each step of the criteria. That's how Atlas is designed. In order to do that by cohort, I forget the term, the cohort explorer that I was looking at, do we need to create separate phenotypes for each criteria, going to each criteria, so I can investigate each cohort? Because there are two databases that seemed unusual to me, as we point out.
So let me try to share my screen here, just so that we are all on the same page about the request. So you have, so we have, these are the two main definitions that are currently under play. One is the unanimity definition without the meds, and this is the with the meds. And ignore this reindex. Reindex was something that Patrick Ryan proposed. If we need to reindex it, we'll visit it later. So these are the two. And in terms of what you're, I think what you're saying is, if I go to this tab called cohort counts, and let's say I'll select a subset of the data sources for now, and select that definition. What you're saying is you have this attrition here, and this is the percentage view, which I can unselect and give you the actual raw numbers. But based on a data source, after applying the rules, this one is the one with medications, we end up with 32% of the people who met the entry criteria. This one is 14%. Christian, are you saying something?
Criterion. I'm not going to stop saying that. It's as wrong as, mixing up there and there, right? You can't do that. You have to do it right. But again, I don't want to be a pain. Keep going.
So Gowtham, I have not seen this. I think when I looked at this last week, I think the inclusion rule was not working for me. So I did not get a chance to investigate this. But that's fine. I will do so and reply to make sure these cohort definitions make sense. I think what we can spend time on is two of the databases, the JMDC one and one of the Truven databases, because if you go to cohort characterization.
Yeah. So very quickly, I'll just bring up the Truven. I think in your post, you talked about Truven MDCD and JMDC, and we are seeing a difference. The color shading pattern, you can see that this one has a significant attrition, the MDCD and JMDC, compared to the other data sources. And again, this is the core definition that has the meds part. Now let me toggle to the one without meds.
In the just for me to understand, in the Shiny App, it's the same way in Atlas that the index criterion is actually not mentioned, right? Which is kind of crazy because here it looks like the first criterion is above 18 years old and it says 96%. There's an index criterion, right? Which is not visible here.
It's not. So if you go to the
by the way, we need to fix that because people who are not familiar with Atlas, if they go here, they have no idea what happened, right?
Yeah. So you're saying this is the entry event criteria.
That's right.
And this allows events or persons to enter. In this particular definition, we're using the latest event, the last event. So it's only one event per person. But if you make this into all events, it will allow more than one record per person. Each record is being an event. And then you apply specific rules that remove records. And you're saying is that was not visible here. Yes, but you can see it. You can see it by unselecting that. And what you see here is 243,913 met that top level criteria. It's not clear.
But the top level criterion is not visible. So if it says
criterion is not visible,
it I don't know what that is, right? So, and that's actually the most important one because that's how the whole thing starts, right? That's how what you base it on. So I know it's in Atlas it's done that way, and so we did it here the same way. In Atlas it's not that bad because you can easily click to see what it was, but here you can't.
That's right. So it's a UI design issue, but in terms of insight, you can see here that the number 242,913 are the number of persons. This is persons because we're restricting one record per person. In that met the top level criteria, and these are the individual rules that removed people. So we lost about 1,000 for greater than 18. We lost 30,000 for the specific Parkinson's disease code. And this particular implementation, that code can happen on the day of or up to 365 days prior, I believe.
3 years.
3 years prior, correct. And then this is the queue encounter requirement in the nested way. And this sounds fishy to me, Dr. Wood, because here there is really no effect of that rule. And that sounds like maybe an error, source of error, which you need to investigate. And then that's the no secondary Parkinsonism conditions rule. And that's
applied to 3 years as well. It's a look back of 3 years.
Gowtham, it's not a mistake. It's right because you're taking the latest one and you're looking 3 years in the back.
Well, the funny thing is, Azza, is that you would expect that there are at least a few patients where it's not 3 years apart, but only a couple of days apart, and then they should be caught by this one, but not by they will not be caught by anything 3 years back, and it will be caught by anything that's 30 days apart, if it's less than 30 days. So if I went to the neurologist or movement specialist, this week and next week, the first criterion, which is, has to have a second one up to 3 years before, I'm in, but the next one I'm not in because it has to be 30 days apart, the encounters. But there are only two.
Did you change that one to 0?
Yeah,
you changed 0 to 1. It was 0. Okay.
Yeah, that's a bug. So this was a bug. What was happening is this was resolving into one occurrence of one Parkinson's disease. The reason it was resolving to one was large in the implementation. It was created 30 days before to 0 days before. The 0 days before would be satisfied by the parent itself. So if you want two distinct dates, you have to just change it to one.
Yeah, and actually, indeed, the best way of doing it is going, instead of using all, you can actually say distinct on different dates. And then now you know they happen.
Is there that's what that is.
Using distinct occurrence of the start date. And you can say at least
actually
two.
No,
but it won't do 30 days
apart. No. You can keep it as is and also request that it's distinct. It's like it's giving you 30 days and they're not the same day.
Okay, so what you're saying is instead of this, you say at least 2, and you make this.
No. Sorry, no, I meant the same thing. No, keep things as is because you're doing as nested. You're right. Sorry, you don't need to do any of that.
Yep.
So
this was.
How do you make it distinct? How do you make it distinct?
So this is the current one. We can fix this by a simple change like this.
Yeah, we got that.
And that's
is that what you wanted to do, Azza, or is there another click?
No, this is enough. I don't want to confuse people. This is good. This is all what you need to do.
Okay. But you do have something else in mind, I know it.
Kirsten, there are 15 people on the call. It's confusing.
I'm shouting out. Yeah.
This was the nested design was based on Patrick Ryan's suggestion from Phenotype February last year.
Yeah,
it's the right design. It's the right design. It was a bug that you need to not include day 0 because if you include day 0, by default you are including that first one on the top of the box because they could be happening the same way. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
You could use 0 if you do 2 distinct dates, but that's too confusing for people. So this is the right way of doing it to make sure that you're actually requiring a second diagnosis or a second diagnosis within the 30 days frame window.
Great.
So we'll fix it and we'll rerun it, Dr. Wu. So basically it says we have a bug, and this is progress. Secondary Parkinsonism has an attrition in one claims database of about 10%.
Yeah, that looks about right. And it's about 5%, should be around 5-10% for the last criteria.
So basically what it's saying here is I'm selecting the radio button gain. So if you remove this rule, you will gain 5% people. That's what it means.
Yep, that's okay.
And has no Parkinson's disease, and it is no neurodegenerative Parkinsonism conditions, was 7.9%. Now it's different by data sources. It is different in JMDC.
Yeah, because they probably totally differently diagnose things.
Yeah. I think what's very interesting about that last criteria with domain knowledge here is that those diagnoses are made with confidence by neurologists, but the progressive supranuclear palsies and cortical basal degenerations are almost never going to get coded by people who are not neurologists. So it depends on the prevalence of neurologists within each database.
So essentially what you're saying is if somebody makes an explicit diagnosis like this, oh boy, then I believe it because these guys know what they're talking about. Is that what you're saying? Because otherwise you have 2 conflicting diagnoses, right? You have the one in the index criterion, and then you have the one in 3, and then you have the one in 4. You believe those guys, you don't believe the one in the index criterion.
Right. It's very, very challenging because there are conflicts even among neurologists for these, and our index criteria is actually broadly defined Parkinsonism. So it's actually a very, very broad capture of all Parkinsonisms, even beyond what is in, criteria 3 and 4.
Okay, I would actually call that out and say the definition is any Parkinsonism except the secondary and the neurodegenerative ones. So people know that it's the broader thing, except I take out explicitly the ones where I know it's not, rather than making it an explicit definition, which is idiopathic. It's totally legitimate, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just I would say that.
I think I'm following you, and it's a privilege to meet you on this call. But it's broadly defined, and criteria 1 and 2 are very explicitly saying, okay, we do want the specific idiopathic Parkinson's code. And then 4 and 5 is excluding very specific secondary neurodegenerative ones. There are going to be Parkinsonisms that don't fit 3, 4, or 2, 3, or 4.
Which is what? Which is
like,
what?
Like weird genetic things that come from childhood and so on. Yeah.
But still, you have to somehow explain that. So theoretically, criterion number 1 should not. So criterion number 3 and criterion number 4 should never be positive if criterion number 1 is positive, is met, because they are exclusive.
They're not.
But they're not, because it doesn't work that way. But
right, it changes from visit to visit.
So
the first it's idiopathic, and then they realize it's a secondary?
Oh, yes, that is what happens. So most of the neurodegenerative Parkinsonisms are first diagnosed with Parkinson's disease because you're correct 80 to 85% of the time. But then over time, it becomes clear this is not behaving properly, and it may take 5 to 10 years to figure that out. And then there's a gradual shift in coding toward the neurodegenerative ones, preferably by a neurologist or movement disorders. But then there's usually a bit of a debate, and then we have the run of risk of the PCPs copying and pasting from whatever the neurologist said without knowing what it really meant.
Of course. Yeah, so this needs to be in the clinical description. This very point. Because people have no idea. I mean, nobody knows. Even
I think I tried to capture that. Maybe it's a little wordy.
Good.
And you talked about...
And Alan, sorry, I interrupted somebody with their hand up, but
Asa,
go ahead. I'll
Let's
speak
follow
next.
the hand raising because this is a large group.
Hand raising.
Actually, my question is very simple. So, rule number 1, it's not affecting anything. So everybody has one of the specific codes. Is the data all loaded all on the specifics? So we don't have codes on any of those broad.
Yeah, we can test that in the index 7 breakdown. That's a great point. If you want, we can go as a group to that very quickly. So index 7 breakdown, yes, what we're observing here is 98.7% of the people just enter because of that Parkinson's disease code.
Which is one of the specific codes.
Correct. So, so essentially it could mean that the broad entry criteria that you selected, Dr. Wu, is not broad enough, or the things that we think are broad do not have any, nobody uses those.
Yeah, I think you might wanna check on that. Sometimes that's where the clinical the clinical fact does not confirm with the data. So the data is really loaded on one code. Just make sure that you did go broader, as broad, like in the vocabulary, when the broad way you wanted to do clinically.
Or what's happening is this is becoming too restrictive.
I don't think it's too restrictive. I think that the thing is, Parkinson's disease is so prevalent that even when people have a Parkinsonism, because it's so prevalent, people just code that. And that introduces error when they see a neurologist eventually.
And have you looked at these codes, Dr. Wu? This is the descendants of the Parkinson's disease parent, including things like sporadic Parkinson's disease and young onset Parkinson's disease. Are these part of your, do you not want these, or do you want these?
No, I wanted all of them. The only one that may not fit is maybe that first atypical one, but I think it's so rarely used. I don't mind it being there. If you're gonna keep coding that, I mean, I think that's an acceptable error. But yes, I did review.
So in terms of changes,
wait, hold on, wait a minute. So this was my code, right? Yeah. Correct. So I selected it as its own concept. Yeah. If you go into the descendants, and I did do this. If you go into the descendants, no, I would leave it off, because I think in all of these, except for that first one, you would expect that the Parkinson's code gets coded. The bottom, the third from the bottom there,
Parkinson's disease.
Why is that there?
Because it includes the parent. Yeah. It's not a sub.
Oh, I see. You're looking at included. Yeah, you're looking at included concepts, not children. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, the children should be there too. This should be all of them.
Yeah, this should be all of them except for, I don't know what the first one is, but I think it's acceptable error. I kind of agree with Christian. I think they can all go in.
Must be a child. Here you go. The first one is a child of Parkinson's. That's one.
Yeah.
No, that's the one. That's the only one. I agree with you. All of these can belong as descendants except for that top one, which is really is a genetic syndrome that I would exclude. Yeah, just like that. I would do that. That works.
Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's so that's Aza. Andrea, you have your hand raised.
Thanks.
Anna.
Oh, Anna is next. Sorry.
No.
Sorry,
I'm saying then Anna. I don't
Okay.
see the names. I'm just giving you a heads up because you can't see.
Yeah.
All right, Andrea.
And I just unraised my hand because I was talking, so yeah, that's the next one. Alan, what percentage of the population with the Parkinson's diagnosis do you think has the secondary or the non-Parkinson or the Parkinsonism non-PD diagnoses?
Yeah, I don't have great data on the secondary ones because those are things that are due to strokes or traumatic brain injuries and normal pressure hydrocephalus. The non-PD neurodegenerative is about 5%.
5%?
Yeah, 5% of the Parkinsonisms that the neurologist movement disorder people see. The secondary ones, probably, I would say about 10 to 15% in broad population, because there's a lot of stroke and there's a lot of brain injury and there's a lot of traumatic brain injuries, and you can get it from football concussions and so on over time. So that's a rough. So I don't have great numbers on the secondary Parkinsonisms, but yeah, the neurodegenerative one is 5%. It might be going up because neurologists are getting better at it.
Gotcha. Because when I was listening to you say it usually takes about 5 to 10 years with a Parkinson's diagnosis before someone gets down to it's a neurodegenerative non-Parkinson. That made me start wondering about excluding people who haven't had 5 to 10 years of follow-up. If you think that it's a large enough portion of your population that you would be nervous about.
Yeah, that's
how much of this, like how much are you okay with tolerating unknown people who are they have a Parkinson diagnosis and in 3 years time they may end up with that non-Parkinsonism flag on their chart.
So the use case here is important to realize where we're coming from as to why we're doing this exercise.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because I'm part of the effort of surveillance for Parkinson's development with the CDC and the California state registries. So the interest there is a very broad, sensitive cohort. We want to capture people because the intense interest is where do they get it and what are the risk factors for getting it and how many people exist that we need to assess health services for. Where are we missing neurologists? Now, we have advocated at the state level to be very broad in our entry criteria for these state surveillance registries. However, when you have a very broad, sensitive definition, then the researchers who are going to use that registry can't use it because there's a risk of error in the specific Parkinson's disease cohorts they wish. So this exercise is with the perspective that we want to know the broad number of Parkinsonisms that could exist, but then as an exercise, front to back cohort exercise, P8, let's look at just Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, okay.
The question is still, so Aza and Gowtham, we need to do this systematically. How long? Because obviously, if we are, if Alan didn't want just all of them, but we really wanted to make sure that they're not the wrong type, we would have to have a follow-up time, right? Or actually in washout time, a time prior. And the longer we make that, the more patients we lose.
Yeah.
In fact, it will be everything but sensitive, right? Most of them we're going to lose if we say 10 years, right? And so we need a way to make this, to have a way to set the washout period for these type of things.
Yeah, so
a systematic standard way, and not so that not everybody pulls it out of their sleeve.
Right. So the publication that we are going off of in 2009, where we're pulling this definition, it was a chart review, that other topic, of charts to validate PD versus non-PD, strictly defined. And for practical purposes, that publication was based on 3 years of charts. So we've chosen to implement this with a 3-year look back. So the entry criteria is broad Parkinsonism, with the latest, the most recent observation that fits that criteria, and then all the criteria that follow are looking back 3 years. So we're okay if they got misdiagnosed prior than 3 years, but we want 3 years of exclusionary diagnoses to be comfortable that it's currently idiopathic Parkinson's disease.
Except if it's the other way around, right? If they first get the generic and then later on they get the specific diagnosis.
Yep.
Not like
We want to know that too. That will be a later exercise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we are very interested. You're exactly right, Christian. You're a neurologist, right? So you get diagnosed with generic stuff early, you get a specific Parkinson's later, and then it falls into this weird bucket of neurodegenerative or other stuff as it becomes clear later in life.
Yeah. So
and we want to do clinical trials off this, which is challenging.
So what you're observing in this table is the distribution of time observed in the data prior to the index date. So what we're observing, the median is at least 3 years for most people.
What are we looking at? Oh, how long we have.
How long they were observed in the data source prior to the entry criteria.
Yeah.
So that,
okay.
So that is assuring, because we did not require that we're only looking at people with 3 years look back, but all our criteria is looking at 3 years. So if you're only 6 months in the data, you're probably not gonna, you're not gonna be excluded, not because you don't satisfy, but because you don't have that data. But it's very assuring to see that on medium we have 3 years. So we, even though we don't require it, that's what we have in this particular data sets. So we are more likely to be specific in improving the criteria we applied, we required.
Again, we need, so yes, you're right, but we need to have this systematic. So any phenotype should ask, if it does this big game of looking back, it has to ask itself, how long are we looking back and what are the data actually support? And we can't do it like, I mean, in this case, there's a reason why it's 3 years, and Alan told us. But usually we should have a way to tell people, look, here's the time you should put in there based on XYZ.
Yeah. I mean, that's done explicitly with chart reviews, right? Because you're looking at the people who are in there for that many years. You don't even specify that, but yes, absolutely.
And it's not a problem if they have less than 3 years, right? You can make the diagnosis in as early as 3 months, and we do that all the time. So that's okay.
Yeah. Anna, you have your hand raised.
Thanks so much. As you were talking, this is very nice conversation. As you were talking, I accumulate the number of comments that I have. I will two disjoint comments. One is that we've this is sort of a non-traditional phenotype in the way that is more complex than what we usually do. And we had the similar experience at Columbia where we tried to identify patients with drug-resistant epilepsy. Now, the challenge is very much the same, as that they first get diagnosed with a regular epilepsy, and then you have to use the medication criteria to infer whether they have drug-resistant epilepsy, and that requires a lot of follow-up, and pretty much the trade-off is very much similar to this case. So the idea, just throwing it out there, the idea that they had there is that you have a sensitive pool of epilepsy patients, and then you have a very specific pool of chart review to drug-resistant epilepsy patients, and then you build a predictive model that will predict the drug-resistant epilepsy and use the features that you observe as highly predictive to build your phenotype. And then you build your testing phenotypes that are not very sensitive but not very specific, somewhere in the middle. in the sweet spot and iterate over them to see which one fits better. So this is just thrown out there that there is an approach like this. Now, the second comment is something I really wanted to get the input of the group on, is that you mentioned, first of all, like this 3 years, for example, is coming from the background knowledge, right? Then you mentioned that you are more likely to believe a diagnosis if diagnosis is made by neurologists, right? This is something that also comes up quite often because people have this perception that, or if it's a specialist, or if a diagnosis is made in a specific clinic, we have more trust towards this diagnosis. No, it's not really well captured in OMOP, and not a lot of people ETL this information so that you have an explicit link. So my question was that, first, are there any other things that would make you think that this is a specialist visit? Maybe some procedures that only neurologists will perform, or maybe some other details that would sort of hint that this is a more informative diagnosis without having this explicit link. And the second question was that we're coming back to this notion of having the external clinical knowledge that we refer back to, like 3 years of average or 10 years of follow-up that we may see, or something else, or the prevalence of a condition, that the question that's been asked, what is the prevalence of it? Is there a way to, is anybody thinking of actually extracting this external knowledge from the, say, publications or books, and getting it in the format where you can actually compare this external knowledge, this objective external knowledge, to what we see in the cohort diagnostics, and say, oh, if it's 5% there and 5% here, it's a match, automatic checkbox. So that was 2 of my questions that I wanted to get the input of the group on.
Great. I think I'll take a first crack at it. Anna, thanks for such insightful comments. The chart review for developing a predictive model is a very strong interest, and that's one of the reasons we're involved with this group, and we are trying to set up our own OMOP Atlas instance at our institution, so we can dive into our own data. There's been plenty of effort trying to identify symptom codes. There is no test for Parkinson's disease. It is all a clinical diagnosis, and there's no lab test, no blood test, no brain scans. Brain scans are normal. So it is challenged. There are some that suggest it, but there's a DAT scan. But most movement disorder neurologists feel that the PET scan test is not as good as the physician, because we get referrals for false positives all the time. The specialist question we've been dealing with, the publication I'm basing the cohorts off of do explicitly have a tiered consensus criteria, which asks the question, did the person see a neurologist in the last 3 years? Did they see a movement disorder neurologist in the last 3 years? If you saw a movement disorders neurologist in the last 3 years, let's look at all the diagnosis codes by the movement disorder doctors and pick the one that's most prevalent. Not the one with absolute exclusion. And then if they do not see a movement disorder person, then drop to the neurologist here and just look at the neurologist diagnosis and pick the highest, the most prevalent PD or non-PD code. And then if they have not seen a neurologist in 3 years, then you go to the general visits and you look at the consensus majority diagnosis code. And so that approach in this paper, which is very interesting, increase the sensitivity, specificity, and positive predictive value over the unanimity, blanket exclusion over 3 years. So that's why we're very intensely interested in that. Movement disorder, to answer Gowtham's question that posed to me earlier today, movement disorders neurologists are not licensed by anybody. We are an apprenticeship. There is no standard anything for a movement disorder neurologist. All I can do is I can say, I'm a movement disorder specialist, and you cannot disprove it. So we will go with neurologists for OMOP, and it is one of our interests is that we can locally add codes that say, hey, if they were seen in this location, this visit type, call it movement, but that is going to be very, very specific to each institution if they wish to partner with us. So we will be doing that eventually. but not here. And then the external knowledge is not sure how to answer that question, but yeah, we have been reviewing the literature for some time. Some of the criteria of external knowledge is really, really difficult because it's just not coded. It's not there. In order to figure out if someone has progressive supranuclear palsy, you have to have an exam finding of supranuclear gaze palsy, which nobody documents.
Yeah, the external knowledge thing, thanks so much. That makes total sense, all of it. No, the external knowledge question was more to the group in the way that it's been raised across different phenotypes a lot, that sometimes we just have this knowledge in our head about the prevalence, for example, and we just comparing numbers based on our knowledge. But there should be a way to get this information from somewhere, have it in the database and compare it, you know.
I see. Okay.
And I don't think you want 5% to match exactly, but if it is wildly different, right? So instead of 5% non-idiopathic ones, you have 80%, then you're going to probably say, ouch.
Yeah, I mean, the one question I want to help get resolved this call is, what is the best way for me to investigate why I had abnormalities in the anticipated demographics in those two databases? If you go to cohort characterization, I can show you what I clued into. And if you just compare any database versus JMDC, for example, I can show you.
Okay, so let's do compare.
You're talking about differences in demographics?
Yeah, there's something about the database, right? There's something about the database of the
Yes.
of the makeup which differs.
Yeah, I think Gowtham, you could have
different databases there, Gowtham.
I did that intentionally, Patrick, because that's the question he's saying. He's saying that I'm observing different characteristics for the same cohort definition.
The same cohort across databases. Okay.
Yes, correct. So this is not what I was looking at.
I think Gowtham, Doctor Who, I'm pretty much sure he's referring to the pretty table. He's talking about the demographics, so age and gender in the pretty table, and you can look at all the databases together because he's saying a different breakdown for JMDC and Medicaid, which we can explain. But yeah.
Right. Thank you, Azza. Yeah, because we anticipate this to be an older group. Older people get Parkinson's disease. Younger people tend not to. And so you can see that JMDC is skewing quite young, especially since our index observation is the latest observation. So this is not a true incidence, right? It's the latest observation age. And the gender breakdown, males get Parkinson's a bit more than females, about 55% or so. And you can see that JMDC is the only one. There's two databases that are female predominant. So we have a female younger onset cohort, and I can only speculate as to why that is. But my suspicion is that there's somehow secondary Parkinsonism, like drug-induced Parkinsonism from, say, antipsychotics, very common cause of Parkinsonism in younger female predominant patients, could be sneaking in somehow and escaping my exclusion criteria in 3 years. So my question is, how do I go about figuring this out?
So Medicaid, let's talk about Medicaid, right? That's where if you go to Medicaid and you look at the age distribution, it has to be skewed by the nature of Medicaid data, because this is covering kids and poor populations in the US. So by nature, Medicaid will always be skewed toward a younger population.
Is that MDCD?
Yeah, that's this column here. So this column here.
Okay.
So what Azza says is generally true, but because this is a highly specialized disease that you expect to only be observed in an older population, and because you have an explanation for the younger population being drug-induced, like antipsychotic-induced movement disorders being misdiagnosed, there may be an alternate explanation other than what the explanation that Azza gave. But in Medicaid, it's heavily weighted on this population that it in terms of the persons in the data source. But I can't explain, and we don't observe anything in that age range in Medicaid. But I can't explain this.
No, this is GMDC. I don't understand why you're, yeah, I don't know.
Is that Japan or what is G?
Yes,
Okay.
that's Japan.
And Alan, you were specifically asking about JMDC, correct?
They're both of them, JMDC and MDCD. Both of them have a female predominance using our cohort definition, and the demographics seem to skew younger than we would otherwise expect.
Yeah.
Because you see the other ones are all male predominant, which is what we expect.
Yeah, so there are 28,000 persons in JMDC data source. If you look at the percentages of that 20 to 24, 25 to 29, and 30 to 34, that's about almost 20%. So 20% of 28,000 is probably around 40,000 here, 4,000. We could build a definition just limited to that subgroup, filter by that demographic.
Hold on, before you go down trying to fix the problem, let's go to index event breakdown. Let's see if we see different pattern for JMDC. And click on source, don't click on standard.
Yep. And you do. You do see a little more secondaries when I did this. The question is, and I'm trying to figure this out, why did my exclusion criteria not capture them? Because it would be unusual to, I mean, it's not terribly unusual, but to have it in such prevalence that you get diagnosed with a secondary Parkinson's from drugs, and then later, for 3 consecutive years, you get coded as Parkinson's disease, and stay young and staying female predominant. That would be a little unusual.
Yeah. This is probably the explanation that either the vocabulary itself is not granular, or the more granular vocabulary codes are not used in this data source. And one way of checking it is to see the prevalence of the codes in that data source.
Yeah. So G20, even though it is Parkinson's disease, if you look at the ICD-10 definition of it, it says primary Parkinsonism, which is a term that makes no sense to neurologists. And the AAN Neurology Specialty Society has certainly commented on this. So it is easy for ETL to mistakenly just throw lots of vague Parkinsonism into G20, which gets translated into a standard Parkinson's disease idiopathic code. So that's not the fault of OMOP, but what we want to know is, how do we characterize databases so we catch this, so that we can say this definition is valid for this type of OMOP instance and not that one?
So from what I understand, this is the input that came before being converted to OMOP. So OMOP received G20. OMOP transformed that to this SNOMED. And that is a one-to-one transformation. So there's no loss in the transformation in the OMOP. But the question here is, actually, it's almost like a database diagnostics kind of question, where we can, do we think that the data does not have enough granularity to answer this question, to phenotype?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. When we run our quality registry at the American Academy of Neurology, we get G20 codes for our Parkinson cases. When we look into IMO, IMO is that company that publishes this this terminology translation for what the doctors pick, and then what it translates to in SNOMED and OMOP on SNOMED and ICD-10 on the back end. They list, IMO has like 20 or 30 different vague Parkinsonisms of various terms that doctors can pick, and they all map to G20. And then when you do the extract, G20 comes out and it gets called Parkinson's disease, because that's what the lookup table says. But the doctor did not pick that. The doctor picked primary Parkinsonism because they wanted to convey they were unsure of the diagnosis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think it's that common, but it's interesting that it can occur.
No, I think this is very typical. That happens all over the place, not just I'm sure in neurology it's particularly bad because you have to be so precise. You know, in other, I mean, you know, like surgery, I mean, you know, who cares? But but we have that problem.
Yeah. I would say the neurologists don't know what they're doing either. I think we deal with the vague.
So just without too much, for somebody who doesn't understand too much of the clinical background, but what I'm observing from the data is that JMDC itself, the data is loaded on one single code in the ICD-10 world, and that is what's the term? Parkinson disease, correct? Which in
it's the same for all data sources. It's not a JMDC issue. So like G20 is the data is something that even Optum DOD is loaded on, even Optum EHR is loaded on.
So if you go to concepts and data source, right, which is ignoring, just looking at what's in the database, and you compare this, you can see that JMDC has a very different breakdown of what the other databases tend to do.
Yeah, this might be more informative.
Yeah, so this is what I focused on. And I said, look, the JMDC has a lot of Parkinsonism due to drug in their data set somehow. But still, my exclusion should capture it. But it is a fundamental difference in the database.
Yes, so there is a fundamental difference here. While JMDC has Parkinson's disease, has other drug-induced secondary Parkinsonism. And those are the two main concepts.
Yeah.
Are you excluding those codes?
I should be, yes. So if you look at that code, it's ends in 929. It should be in our secondary Parkinsonism exclusion list. And if it's not, then I need to make sure. But that is the right question. Maybe I didn't do it right in the concept set.
Yeah, secondary Parkinsonism. Let's see. So in your, you're talking about this particular one, specific code.
No, you want the secondary, the cohort number. Yep. Sorry. Yep.
It's not.
It's not. That concept was a source concept. Gowtham said, look in included source concepts to see if it's there.
Oh yeah, I could have done that. Yep, it's excluded. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was puzzled. I didn't know where to go from here.
Yeah. So to focus on the question, here what we are observing is in JMDC we have female preponderance and younger age preponderance, and one hypothesis is the coding is not granular enough in JMDC, so people are loading on a more broader concept. That is possibly true. The other explanation is the codes that are part of the secondary Parkinson's disease and the neurodegenerative Parkinson's disease are not present in JMDC. Because they're not present, they're not being excluded. And all the people who are belonging to that female preponderance and younger age belong to that non-Parkinson's disease.
But that should mean that there's some code that's sneaking through in JMDC that allows it to be included in the cohort that somehow I'm not excluding. Either that or they just have a whole host of people that in the last 3 years, they all of a sudden get coded as Parkinson's disease, even though like 40% or whatever of their database is drug-induced Parkinsonism. So this might be something where we would benefit from a chart review.
So yeah, so if you're doing a chart review, you would be focusing on this population, right? You want to know why this is why the algorithm is picking it up, but you believe that this is false positive.
That's right. The other way to look at this is if we could run a cohort on JMDC that looks back 6 years, or just looks back between 3 and 6 years ago, to try to figure out, is there something particular about this 3-year criteria that's letting them sneak in? I mean, I just want to explore this database a little more, but I don't have the tools to really do it.
Yeah, so you're trying to explain false positive as a go ahead.
We can try this. We can look at cohort characterization and compare between JMDC and say, pick one other data source and see if there's any other covariates that is also differential that might explain something. Is there some other diseases like, so instead of thinking of only the Parkinsonism codes, you can see if there's something else different other than gender and age that maybe that is related, that maybe help us understand.
Yeah, I'm just trying to generate that report.
Have we seen this kind of age shifting in other conditions that we've explored?
No,
like I'm wondering if it's a misattribution of age instead of a misattribution of the diagnosis. Because the distribution of ages there looks pretty similar if you were to time shift it by like 15 years.
Here's your answer. Schizophrenia. 50% of the persons in JMDC had schizophrenia. 2% in the Optum DOD has schizophrenia.
Yeah, so schizophrenia is treated with drugs that cause Parkinsonism. That's drug-induced Parkinsonism.
I mean, the making the assumption that we have a random sample of the general population for these databases is probably not right. We know it's not right, which means those type of deviations will happen. And then Japan and different countries will have different diagnosis habits, and overdiagnose, underdiagnose, something maybe a fashion, and the threshold for putting this diagnosis out might be very different. And if there's money attached to it, then you will see this heavily. And claims data have money attached to it. So if the Japanese pay a lot for schizophrenic or Parkinson patients, if push comes to shove, they have a Parkinson. So I wouldn't.
But that won't explain the difference in gender. Why would it be going
it
towards
does.
female?
I think I have a hypothesis. I think what's happening is there's a very large percentage of schizophrenia patients in Japan. Let's assume that a large proportion of them get drugs that cause Parkinsonism. Half of them get coded with drug-induced Parkinsonism, but the other half does not. And the doctors just code Parkinson's disease for half of them, and they code drug-induced Parkinsonism for the others. So we end up with schizophrenia, which is a young female predominant diagnosis in Japan. That makes sense to me.
By the way, that is a paper.
Yeah.
I am all ears. We are doing this to collaborate, and I love it.
If we can make that, if we can pull that out of the data, that'd be a paper.
But in terms of measurement error, you would think, so what we are thinking of is that for this cohort definition, for this phenotype, we have a potential specificity error of more false positives in JMDC specifically, detected, or the way we detect it is by the different age and gender distribution among the people who met the definition, could be explained by the hypotheses that some of these Parkinsonism we're detecting are actually drug-induced, but the data is not granular to suggest that they are drug-induced because everybody's coded as Parkinsonism only. And the one evidence that supports that is the high prevalence of schizophrenia. And you can actually look if the drug is, if you observe also the drug, because you can see.
We can look to see if the drug is present. That is wonderful idea.
These are the drugs that appear to be different between the data sources. There is a drug called loxoprofen, which I do not know, rebamipide, carbocysteine.
No, I actually have a concept set. Oh, no, I don't. But no, that's an anti-inflammatory. I think we're looking for very specific medications like olanzapine or risperidone are the ones that are used a lot.
Yep, it is definitely higher in the JMDC population, 17.2% versus 3.7%.
Yeah. Or risperidone. A little older drug.
21% versus 4.8%.
Yeah.
There you go. Start writing.
So can we look at the other database, the other MDC? I know, Ozzy, you said that's just intrinsically a younger population, but it still doesn't.
But also mental health is highly prevalent on that database as well.
So I bet that's going to be the case here too. So that would strengthen the paper.
Two data sources independently having similar observations with one data source known to have higher mental health issues. Okay.
But does anybody know why Japan has so much schizophrenia in their, is that their Medicaid database or Medicare database equivalent?
No, it's just one of the.
Not as much of a contrast, but 6.4 and 4.8 for risperidone. 4.7 and 3.7% for
Can we look at the confounding condition?
Alan, I'd probably reframe your question as it relates to JMDC. Don't think of it that they have so much schizophrenia, but think of it as maybe they don't have that much Parkinson's. And specifically, it's an employer-based data set, so you don't have the older population as much. So if you think about like truncating at 65, roughly speaking, you take them away, then you're left with a small fraction of Parkinson's. So it's not that there's a lot of schizophrenia, it's just that the proportion of schizophrenia to young Parkinson's may be large.
But Patrick, they all have the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease.
I understand, but if it's the Parkinson's code is getting attached to a schizophrenic, then that could explain that really we're just seeing, so it's not that there's a disproportionate amount of schizophrenics, it's just that we're seeing Parkinson's codes appearing on schizophrenics.
Mm-hmm.
And that would explain the distribution showing up.
Can we see if there's a confounding condition of schizophrenia in the MDCD database?
Actually, yeah. Why don't we look at the condition distribution?
14 and 2.9.
There you go. And in Medicaid, MDCD?
That's it. This is Medicaid.
Yeah.
Is Medicaid.
Yeah.
Oh. And the Japanese one?
Japanese was like 40% or something like that.
Schizophrenia?
Yeah.
40%?
Among the people who have the diagnosis code of Parkinson's disease, 40% also had schizophrenia. It doesn't mean 40% of people in JMDC have schizophrenia.
Good. Thank you. Good.
Okay, well, this was very helpful to me.
And the 14% for Medicaid might not necessarily be wrong. I think we would need to be comparing this relative to a referent in the data set itself. Like schizophrenia gets you into Medicaid. So the 14% doesn't actually intrinsically seem necessarily bad to me there in comparison to Optum being a privately insured population. I think that the 40% in JMDC is really the outlier number, not this 14%.
Yeah. We are at 1 o'clock. This was a scheduled time. The next action items. We have to fix some. We are going to fix some issues that were popped up in the definitions. We'll promote that to both those flavors of unanimity definition. I'll rerun it. Do we want another call?
Yeah, let's schedule another call. I think Destiny is on the call here. She can help make sure my schedule's free. Do you want to do it Friday or Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday? Next week, Wednesday, same time?
Okay. I'll if you are available, then I will set up a meeting similarly.
Yep, just keep Destiny on it. And I'd love to talk about the tiered consensus criteria. I think there's a lot of pluses if we can, but yeah, this is really, really helpful. And can someone send me what these 12 databases are? They're all cryptic abbreviations to me.
I can do it.
Thank you, Haza. All right,
And
thank you.
I did take notes for the evaluation. I'll tie them up and share with them so we can post them on the forum.
Thank you.
Good. Okay.
And Gowtham, are you doing the updates to the fixes on the definition, or am I doing it on demo?
Yeah, I have not made any changes to the Atlas demo, so you will be. If you need any help, I'll offer you, but I'm relying on you to make the changes to the Atlas demo.
Okay, I'll do it. Thank you.
And just let me know when ready, and I'll just take a snapshot and run it.
Yep, I'll post it. Thank you.
Thanks.